Okay, so firstly, I want to thank Jessie Clare for agreeing to be interviewed for this assessment on the 5 planks of the GTPA. My name is Max Hobeck. Jessie Clare was a teacher that I taught with in my first prac for Nora Point High, so yeah, very grateful for her to be here tonight and agreeing to be interviewed. Okay, first question. How do you as a teacher use data to inform decisions for planning and teaching a cycle?
I would say I use data to inform planning and teaching, I'd say along with evidence-based strategies, to ensure best student outcomes according to student needs, ability levels, individual learning styles. I also consider the student's cultural background and behaviour, and that's all included in the data that I'll be looking at, basing it on.
Yeah, pretty broad range of data. That's great. Okay, question 2. How do you as a teacher plan lessons to incorporate engaging teaching strategies?
Well, I think with engaging teaching strategies, I'd say the first point would be to incorporate settler activities, to sort of have the students ensuring that they're engaged in the first place. So I would range from some recapping of the previous lesson.
Prior knowledge.
Class content, some inquiry questions, to gauge that prior knowledge. And I'd employ explicit teaching and learning intentions and success criteria. So clarity and flow of lessons. The students know exactly what's expected of them and what the lesson's going to consist of. I utilise a range of collaborative and social activities. So there's group work, think, pair, share, and individual work. So each student's style is kind of met and attended to. And also I think what's really important is that kinesthetic, visual and linguistic activities can also capture each student in the class.
Right, to keep them as engaged as possible.
Yeah, and to ensure the success of a wide range of those kids and their learning styles and the success of each student individually, each individual student.
Okay. All right, question 3. How do you as a teacher select and use a variety of assessment tools and practices, including feedback?
The importance, I would say, with both summative and formative assessments, really as a diagnostic tool. I use this to sort of pitch tasks, and I think it's really important to give timely feedback to help students, to inform them on where their strengths are and where their gaps in knowledge are. So this is where they can work. This is what the area they can work on.
Kind of like assessment as learning.
Absolutely.
Assessment
it's ongoing.
Assessment for learning.
Yeah, and in each moment of each lesson, those assessments are constantly happening. Sort of checking their work as you walk around the room, see what they're talking about, what they're asking you. So moment to moment.
Timely feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, question 4. How do you as a teacher make judgments on the quality of student work, and how do you engage in moderation practices?
I engage in moderation practices with colleagues. It's really helpful to sort of meet up and discuss, to compare work samples, to ensure that assessment levels are an appropriate level for the students, but also to make sure that work is fairly pitched and marked along the whole cohort of students.
So it's usually a pretty collaborative approach.
Yeah, it
colleagues,
is. Yeah, I mean, it's
group
group work is really important. I think when we come together as a group, we get to share our strengths.
The group of teachers, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Group of colleagues. So we get to share our strengths, our insights, our reflective. We get to reflect together, and I think when we do that, we really can ensure best practice, and that new ideas are being discussed, and we do get to share cross-faculty, and then there's this really interesting sort of synthesis of subjects this way, and it really enriches the students' experiences in a class and learning experiences.
What do you think about rubrics? Do you make use of rubrics with particularly summative assessments?
Absolutely. Well, that sort of helps systematise and also helps with scope and sequence. To make sure that that content is being covered in a kind of a logical sequence. So rubric is really vital in that area. And as we go on through the term, students can enrich rubric, can take out things that have not worked and add things that would capture the students a little bit more.
Okay. All right. So, question 5: How do you measure the impact of your teaching and the impact it's having on students' learning?
Well, I would sort of see the measure of impact of success of my teaching on students' learning, I guess, immediately as setting up rich student engagement in deep learning. Seeing the students engaged, and a longer term success assessment, I would say, is am I observing a feeling of student well-being in the classroom, and the pride in their learning and their work, and it's very clear when students feel like they are doing well in a class and when they can ask questions and inquire in that subject area.
Okay. So just another quick question. How do you incorporate cross-curriculum priorities in your teaching?
Okay. So I'd say cross-curriculum...
particularly considering you've been doing a lot of work in Indigenous communities
absolutely.
lately. Okay, so just one final question. As a beginning teacher, and I'm sure for most beginning teachers, how to manage very challenging behaviours from kids is one of the biggest challenges as a beginning teacher. How do you go about managing challenging behaviours?
I would say to a new teacher, first of all, just go into that class with a expectation of very open observation, seeing the dynamics of the class, and then I would say from that point of observation you would set out some really clear rules and expectations, whether that's seating plans, whether that's at the beginning of the class we line up outside, we don't enter the classroom till we're all quietened down and calmed down.
To keep your expectations high.
High and clear.
Yeah.
High and clear. And then
explicit.
Explicit. Yeah. I think once you're in the room, then having a really loose but clear system is very helpful with high school students, showing that you're fair, that you're patient and flexible, but that there's definitely a point at which learning needs to occur. And I think when you are respectful of the students, by giving them a little bit of leeway, that's when you absolutely kind of win their trust, and then they will pretty much be ready to learn. And I think I really do think after all my years of teaching, it comes down to just being fair and respectful, and that will be reciprocated. In the instances that it isn't, you have a backup plan of very clear, a clear system of, if you haven't followed my instructions, 3 times, then there'll be a system of you're up on the board. If you're up on the board 3 times, it might be leadership become involved or parents become involved. And I think
so there has to be consequences involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some kind of consequences.
But I really do think that students want to do the best. So I think just by having these mechanisms in place ensures that students really do try to stick to these kind of measures in a way. That's by and large my experience of teenagers who can be super challenging.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks for that.
Thanks.